The state of play happened recently. They showed some games, most of which I honestly wasn't really excited for, but there was one game that caught everybody's eye, which was the new God of War game. Well, I say God of War, but it doesn't actually star the God of War, so the name is already kind of misleading, and the internet has lost its mind over it. So are people vindicated in their opinion or not? Well, let's get into it. So you already know that Laufey, that's the wife of Kratos, is now the main character of the new game, which takes place in the afterlife of the gods that is called the Everywhen. I guess I'll get the positives out of the way first, I guess. I like the idea of the Everywhen, that gods have somewhere to go that is separate from mortals. It adds a nice new layer to the entire God of War franchise and all that. It's cool because it means that technically Zeus, Ares, Athena, and then some could and probably are going to be somewhere in this Everywhen just, existing. And I can only imagine that we will definitely meet some of them at some point in this Laufey game, so that, I guess, at least is cool. The other positive is, the mixture of the mythologies. As we did see both Egyptian and Tibetan mythological gods show up in the 20-minute demo, and they look cool. Again, I have no issue with God of War tackling or showcasing other mythologies at all. It's kind of the whole point. Of course, I welcome that. I want them to get weird with it. Show me all the mythologies. I'm game for that. And that's kind of the positives, because otherwise, well, let's get into the rest of it now. The obvious point of contention for many is Laufey herself. I gotta be real, calling this game God of War at all, it feels sort of wrong, because obviously it doesn't actually star Kratos. I know people will say it's called Laufey, but the game still obviously uses the God of War moniker because of brand recognition and SEO, which I get that, but either way, I think it's becoming very clear that a vast majority of people who like God of War do not in fact want to play as anybody other than Kratos. Like, for example, right, even in the 2018 game or Ragnarok, when you get forced to play as Atreus even there, like, I gotta be real, I wasn't feeling that. This isn't really a male or female thing. I mean, Atreus wasn't terrible to play as, but come on, to compare his moveset to Kratos, it didn't feel as interesting. That much was certain to me, at least. The bow was kind of whatever, summoning the spirit animals, it just wasn't what I wanted, right? God of War is cool, because you're this big hulking dude with his blades of chaos or the Leviathan axe. You're just cutting down freaks left and right. That's the whole power fantasy of it. Yeah, I know people will say, well, the axe is Faye, and that's cool, good for her, but the axe is cool because it's in the hands of Kratos. That's sort of the point. The blades of chaos are also cool too, but if they were suddenly placed in the hands of somebody else, it wouldn't be as cool, Everything is cool because it's Kratos. In a lot of ways, God of War is to Kratos what Master Chief is to Halo, you know what I mean? Sure, Halo Reach and ODST were games where he didn't play as Chief, but for the most part, the reason why people like Halo is because of Master Chief. These characters and more, they're all tied directly to their franchises for a reason. If The Legend of Zelda didn't star Link nor Zelda, but some other character, I think people would be confused because people want to play mostly as Link, The same kind of goes for God of War. I personally want to play as Kratos for the most part. I'm not saying Laufey or Faye is a bad character. She isn't. But do I want to play as her over her husband? Not really, no. I think the only other characters I would maybe want to play in a God of War spin-off game, I guess, would be maybe Thor. Like, if Thor got a redemption arc after Ragnarok, now that we know an afterlife exists for the gods, and Thor kind of went on a journey of self-discovery and rediscovered himself and his purpose and all that. Because obviously in Ragnarok, Thor is this hulking slob of a man, big beer belly, unkept hair. He's clearly a shadow of his former self. Like, that would be cool. Because we would see someone like Thor find himself again, become worthy of Mjolnir, and then become the God of Thunder. But that's the key there, right? I wouldn't want that game, even if it did exist, to be called God of War Thor or something. They should just lean into it and call it something like the God of Thunder, and that's just what it is now. I would have loved to see Thor work through his trauma, learn that he's more than just a monster and a weapon to be wielded by Odin, and you could have Thor confront the giants and the Everywhen that he slaughtered in the name of Odin and have him repent for it and grow and accept that he was being used. And then by the end, Thor's a changed man. He probably loses the gut, gets more fit before wielding Mjolnir. You can have Thor wielding giant two-hand swords and warhammers, and then when he gets Mjolnir again, it's like a rebirth of sorts. And then you could have Thor go off on his own journey, escape the Everywhen using Mjolnir, and then becoming this new staple spin-off character that people would actually want to follow, because we saw Thor fight Kratos in Ragnarok. The dude's a beast. Even in a weakened state, he's nuts. Like, I would have loved to see more of his character. I mean, maybe one day they could do that, but even then, if they ended up calling it God of War, it would still make no sense. It would still have backlash, even if it's in the same universe, because you're not the God of War in that instance. Right now, you're the God of Thunder. That would be a sick name, though, for a spinoff. I gotta be real. Besides Thor, maybe an aged up Atreus could work, but honestly, it still wouldn't fix the problem that Atreus is just, he's not as cool as Kratos. I'm sorry, he just isn't. And with Laufey, it's like, this is not God of War, right? Like, she's a giant, I know. She's not even technically a god of anything that I'm aware of. I know some people online were wondering, well, how does a giant make it into the realm of the gods anyways? One theory, I guess, is that giants maybe are just seen as equals to gods in terms of importance, therefore they go to the same place in the afterlife, which would mean that Faye could find her people in the Everywhen place after Odin and Thor, one-tapped everybody. The other theory I saw online was that Laufey is shown having a splinter of that mask that Odin was freaking out about in Ragnarok lodged in her finger. And maybe that splinter gave her godlike power, so it mistakenly sent her someplace she wasn't meant to be. Or maybe the mask splinter is what poisoned her in the first place and led to her demise in the real world. I don't know, but either way, it doesn't change the fact that people just don't seem really that excited about playing as Laufey, right? That's kind of the point. Because this is now, no joke, like I'm pretty sure anyways, every major Sony first-party studio game now has some form of a female protagonist leading that franchise. Like God of War, Horizon, Last of Us, Ghost of, I guess, Yote, Ratchet and Clank even. I mean, it goes on. Uncharted too. And I'm sure once they do another Uncharted game with Nathan's daughter, probably, the cycle will just continue that way. At first, it was like, okay, maybe if you have one female hero game, fine. But this has gotten to the point where if every major Sony franchise that isn't dormant for years, like a Resistance, I guess, is now pushing this pretty much like universally, I have to ask, like, what's going on? Like, it gets to a point where people could argue it's not by design, but at this point, especially with Laufey now, I mean, come on, you can't deny this at all now. This is every single main franchise, pretty much entirely now for Sony at this point. Even the Wolverine game has you playing as Jean Grey, who looks very middle-aged and weird in that game too. Like, I don't know, man, I just feel tired about it. It's like, how do I put this? You know what it's like? It's sort of like Star Wars, you know? There's a quote by Chris Gore of Film Threat from a while ago where Chris Gore said something along the lines of Disney's most costly mistake will be trying to turn Star Wars from a boy brand into a girl brand. And then you look at the absolute state of Disney right now and how poorly Star Wars is going for them. Like Mandalorian, which tried to push a woman over the main character in season 3, which was so abysmal it just tanked the movie, and that's obvious. And that kind of also proves Chris Gore right, and I think you could take that same mentality and idea and apply it to the Sony PlayStation's first-party offerings, and it translates rather perfectly too. It seems like at this point that Sony's just fine with every single one of their franchises, for the most part, starring to some capacity leading women now. And I'm not saying there aren't female gamers. There are, but the reality is a brand like this is largely kept alive by male players. It just is what it is. Video games is mostly a male-dominated hobby, whether people want to say that or not. The same way the makeup industry should cater to women, or why every clothing store that you go into pretty much has like a 75% share of the entire store targeted towards women over men. There's a reason for that, because women, of course, buy more clothes than men. That's fine. They just do that. It's not bad or anything. It's just the truth. Yet what I've noticed for years now is how the spaces meant for men, like games or certain franchises, they just can't be for men anymore, you know? Everything has to be changed because something men can't be in power or whatever. It's just kind of dumb, honestly. I said in a previous video about this Laufey game, this was before we knew what it was called or what it was going to be about, that I suggested that if they were going to make this game, it would probably be a good idea to just call it something else. Not main title, subtitle, but just something else. Goddess of War wouldn't work because she's not a god of anything war related. I suggested God of Stories, as a stories part could be a one-size-fits-all term to tell other stories in the God of War universe. But the way that this is being positioned, it's just, this is God of War, but it just doesn't star the guy that you want to play as, which feels weird. It's like calling a comic that stars Spider-Gwen, Spider-Man, Spider-Gwen, but that's confusing because it's not Spider-Man then, that you're following in the story, you know? It just seems like Sony is not willing to allow the name God of War to not be a part of the game because of, again, brand recognition and SEO or search engine optimization. But either way, it feels off. Then there's the other, I guess, characters in this game. So one is called Frank, who's voiced by Jack Quaid in Laufey. He's this big gelatinous cube, and this was another part of the game's reveal where I kind of just went, what are we doing, man? Okay, I get it, right? You need some companion in like every Sony game now to speak to, but of all the things you could have done, that's what we went with. People try to figure out where this cube even was from, like what mythology and all that, and nobody seems to know what it is. Some think that it's like a cosmic thing like the Tesseract, other thinks it's a reference to Dungeons and Dragons with a literal slime cube. Either way, would it be so hard to not just find, you know, some other godlike being to follow Laufey instead? Like at one point in the gameplay demo, Faye saves some bluish green godling looking thing, like maybe that could have worked, I guess not. Then you have the other character in this game which is named Rue, which is the purple ribbons on the sword that Laufey wields. I could be wrong, but I'm like 85% sure that sword is Excalibur. Why the Tibetan god is afraid of maybe Excalibur, no idea. But I will say I do like the idea of blending mythologies like this, although it would have been cool to have Kratos wield Excalibur, but I guess not anymore. I'm also going to guess that the Rue character, the purple ribbons I mean, is something to do with Asian mythology, since many Chinese swords have those tassel-like ornaments attached to them. I mean, the actor playing Rue is also Asian, so I guess that was done on purpose probably. Because you gotta tie actors to who they convey these days, right? It's gotta be inclusive and all that. It's exhausting, I know. But either way, this game's reveal to me, it felt like Sony Santa Monica was really trying to force what a God of War game is supposed to be, you know? Again, if it was called something else entirely, maybe people would be more open to it, but if your game is called what it is, people are gonna expect a God of War. Honestly, if the next game was Kratos, and maybe he gets defeated by some insanely overpowered god from like Egypt or something, and then he got sent to the Everywhen, and Kratos has to find his way back to protect his people, yeah, absolutely, that'd be a really cool idea for a game. Kratos meeting that fire Tibetan god that Laufey fights in the demo, I mean, come on, Kratos would be staring that god in its multiple eyes ready to fight. And you could have Kratos at the end return to the real world, fight that god that defeated him, now like super powered with new purpose. They could have even used the Everywhen and use its magical properties to DH Kratos or prolong his life even, so he's good to go for future games, but I guess that won't happen now. Sure, yes, we know there will be more Kratos games. We know this because Corey Balrog confirmed this in the director interview that they had around this game. They are also actively working on another Kratos adventure. Probably set in Egypt, so Sony is still committed to that, but I think if you have a series called God of War in general, people want to play as a god. Again, Thor would have been the easiest pivot possible here. People would have loved a Thor game. I know I would have. Imagine the Leviathan Axe callback mechanic, but it's with Mjolnir. That would have been nuts, dude. Calling down lightning, wielding Thor's powers to do AoE damage on a bunch of dudes, or crushing enemy armor with the power of the raw lightning. Like, god, that would have been sick. Asmongold, for example, responded to one user saying that people are just afraid of women. Here's what Asmongold said. And the meme he shows is pretty obvious, right? The blue is what you expect from the franchise, but when you sit down and play it, the blue is now red. Yeah, you've been swindled. That's the idea. It's not that people don't want to play as women. Again, Stellar Blade sold well. The Resident Evil games have women in them from the beginning. Bayonetta, Lara Croft, etc. But here, okay? I'll use an example in the other direction to explain to the people who think that Faye is a good idea so that they kind of understand where people are coming from. So, let's go look at the new Tomb Raider game that got announced. Also, it's the same state of play, right? A remake of the first game, Atlantis and all that. So everybody who plays Tomb Raider plays that series because why? Well, they want to be Lara Croft. That's the point. You do not want to play Tomb Raider if suddenly a game exists where you are some other random Tomb Raider person. But the new character now still raids Tomb, as they'll say, so it's still Tomb Raider. No, it doesn't matter. The reason why you want to play Tomb Raider is because you want to be the Tomb Raider. And by the way, this would be equally as stupid if, say, a new Tomb Raider game existed and they made a pivot and suddenly a man was playable over Lara. No, I wouldn't want that either. I don't want to play as a man in the Tomb Raider franchise. I don't want some guy taking over what that is. Tomb Raider is unique, as is God of War, because you respect the roots that it came from. Tomb Raider, yeah, it's a female-led franchise. Cool, no problem with that. I love that. So again, may I ask, why does God of War need to have female-led games then? You see what I mean? I know some people will think, oh, it's misogynistic, but it really isn't. People just don't want to buy and play something that is set in a franchise for someone else. Again, a lot of this could have been mitigated if it was just named something else entirely, but it's the principle of what's going on that is causing the problems, and that's the point. It's as Asmongold said, right? You buy a blue game, but it's red. Why can't the blue game be blue and the red game be red? Why do you have to keep turning things into other things they don't need to be is the point. It's like a Bayonetta game getting announced or a Stellar Blade sequel, and then Shift Up goes, enough of Eve and her curves. We're done with Eve. Now you're going to play as Larry. Here's Larry, everybody. He's the new protagonist. No, the game will bomb. I don't want to play as Larry. I want to be Eve. Yeah, I'm a guy. I know I'm not a woman, but is it so hard to understand that people like things because of who those games are about? Like if I sat down to watch Spider-Man Brand New Day and suddenly the whole movie's about Spider-Gwen, and this is a very similar reason to why people were mad about Last of Us. We wanted to play as Joel. We don't mind playing as Ellie. We know Ellie is playable in the first game for a little bit, but we liked Last of Us because we wanted to play as Joel. Why? Because Joel is cool. We like Joel. We like the idea of the grizzled smuggler guy being the playable character. Why is that not allowed? Why is that bad to say or feel? I guess that's not misogynistic. So when I play God of War, I'm not saying that I hate Laufey or I don't want her to exist. No, I get it. She's very important to the story. The entire 2018 game is Kratos and Atreus following the path that Laufey set for them. I get that. Yes, I understand that Faye's instructions in the beginning of 2018 with Kratos cutting down the handprint tree was to reveal their location to Baldur and Odin and Thor, who, by the way, Baldur then immediately shows up following Kratos doing what Faye instructed him to do. Look, I get all of that. I totally understand that Faye's master plan is to enact Ragnarok and have Kratos take down Odin and become the god of hope. Nobody's denying any of these things, but the point of the matter is that people want to be the god of war in a game that is titled God of War. That's really all it is. And the fact that these very simple principles cannot be followed is why you're having the backlash. Interesting how when it comes to female-led franchises, every company and developer under the sun, they just seem to understand this completely. Female-led franchise, female main character, yeah, we won't change that because that makes sense. As soon as it's a male protagonist-led franchise, well, come on. Why are you mad that a woman is in the lead now? What are you, an incel? No, we're not. Plenty of people who think this is lame have wives and girlfriends. We just want to play the God of War in the God of War game. Why is it so hard to understand? It's why nobody complained when Spider-Man Miles Morales was named Miles Morales because you played Miles Morales. But people did complain when you bought Spider-Man 2, which should have Peter saving the day and being the hero, but here comes Miles saving the day in a game not called Miles Morales. But they're both Spider-Man, they'll say. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know the sequel to Spider-Man, which starred Spider-Man, needed Miles Morales to save the day for him. If I wanted the game where Miles saves the day, I would have played the game called Miles Morales then. How is it so hard to understand? Some may think you're being rigid, but it really isn't. We already figured out how to do this. You just make spin-offs. You name it something else. It's fine. But when you do this, the backlash is not surprising for a reason. Again, I think the idea of the game is interesting. The everyone and the afterlife and all that, I mean. Absolutely. That seems very cool to explore for many, many reasons. Don't get me wrong there at all. It's just that I wish I got to explore that place as the God of War, you know? Because you would have had Kratos there meeting up with the Greek gods that he slaughtered years ago. And imagine the meeting, like, dude, between Kratos and Ares, all those years, and multiple games removed, like how that would have gone down. Ares would have resented Kratos because he stole his godhood in the first game, and now they're meeting after everything that has happened in this new realm. Like the tension, the writing, you could just feel that off the page. Or Kratos running into Athena and Zeus realizing that Kratos effectively doomed the Greek part of the world in the name of revenge. But since this is post-Ragnarok, the Kratos now is a different man. And like, how would that conversation go between those men? Would it be a meeting of malicious intent? Or would it have been like a somber affair? Like, you see what I mean? That is the reason why people like playing as Kratos. It's not because he's just some guy. They want to play as him because the dude has history. And you can go ahead and make the idea of here's this other realm where basically everybody Kratos unceremoniously ended is like hanging out in their own afterlife right now. Yet Kratos is just nowhere to be found to interact with these people. Like, that just feels like a missed opportunity to me. It would be like Mary Jane going into the afterlife to meet Uncle Ben and Aunt May, but like Peter's still on Earth. Like, it would be interesting, I guess, kind of. But would it be more cool and poignant to see Peter talking to Uncle Ben after all he did is Spider-Man? Yeah, obviously. It just kind of feels like we're twisting things in any which way we can to force another male franchise to star another woman. Again, it would be no problem if this just happened maybe one time, right? But it just keeps happening. I get so much hate for saying this about, like, say, Ghost of Yotei, but seriously, like, was I really wrong in retrospect? Why does every Sony franchise need to do the same thing now? There's no way that everyone who works in first party at Sony just happened to go, yeah, we're doing women-only stuff now without it being some weird calculated move on their part. I said this on Twitter, but the push for female protagonists in the past decade or so, it is the new bald-headed space marine from the early 2000s. It really is. Like, back then, so many games starred some guy with a shaved head or just short hair in a suit or of like armor just shooting stuff. Mass Effect, Gears of War, so many shovelware games that came out then, even Halo, Spec Ops The Line, GTA 4 had the shaved head guy main character. Call of Duty games even, yeah, it got a little bit too much, but this seems like an overcorrection in the opposite direction. Now instead every game stars a woman. Oh, please play Ghost of Yotei. Now play Laufey. Please look forward to Intergalactic, another female-led game. But again, it just seems like an overcorrection, right? Like, it's just kind of boring. It's not misogynistic to point this out. It's just what it is. It's kind of boring. I guarantee you at this point, whenever if a new Infamous game were to get made now, I would bet money it stars a woman too. And the same reaction will happen again. And people will go, oh, you hate women. No, but am I kind of tired that every franchise I like is forcing a female protagonist? Kind of, yeah. Again, I respect the female-led franchises. I'm not over here saying that Horizon Zero Dawn's franchise, whatever, has to star a man one day, or that Final Fantasy VI should be remade and we should turn Terra into a guy. I'm not saying that. It's just, it's so weird that men are meant to be respectful and understanding of female-led franchises franchises and stuff, and we totally get that and we're fine with it. And we even play those games and all that, but when it comes to having that same level of respect and understanding set our way in return, now it's a problem. It just can't be how it goes, man. It really can't. This is not a battle of misogyny. This is just basic levels of, can we get the thing that we signed up for, and can we stop trying to turn everything from a male hobby to a female one, as Chris Gore said? Like, here's the ex-Activision Blizzard CEO Mike Ybarra, who said that he was even confused by the reveal of Laufey. And he flat out states that he couldn't help but wonder what he was even seeing. And look, I criticize this guy a lot, but kudos. He's at least willing to understand from a business perspective, this is not really the move to make right now. Had this game existed years ago, maybe people would be more receptive to like what's going on. But I think at this point, with how often this just keeps happening, all you really have is apathy and exhaustion at these announcements now. Like, we are just kind of tired of it. Tired of being told that we need to be respectful to this, and if Tomb Raider needs to star Lara Croft, why is it wrong to want Kratos to be in his games? That's really what this all comes down to. And again, people don't even want like Atreus to be the main character in God of War even. And like, again, he's a straight white male and all that too, right? Which kind of tells you this doesn't really come down to the fact that it needs to star another man or something. It's just that like, we just want to be Kratos. That's all it really is. And the same people who will call you an incel or a woman hater when I'm not really either. I mean, I have a girlfriend. Like, it's just tiring, man. It's just like every franchise I like doesn't seem to care about their audience anymore. We just need to keep making things for everyone but the main majority of the people who bought these games in the first place. And I guess what Chris Gore said really is what will keep happening. If Sony wants to keep turning their male-dominated franchises into these female-led ones instead, it's going to be a costly mistake, but I don't really think they care anyways. Because the progress, I guess, is worth the damage to them. That's what it comes down to. No one is saying you can't have female-led games. All we're saying is, if you want the respect of like the male players are apparently required to give to everyone, it is baffling and insulting that it doesn't seem to be something that these same players are allowed to receive, right? I guess now I'm going to ask you, what do you think about all of this? Is Laufey a good or a bad idea? Let me know. There's so much more to explore here. So I'll see if I can go into a more like deep end on this topic in a future video. But for now, let me know if that's something that you want. Thanks for being here. Subscribe if you want to. See you next time.